there, Randy Green here. I'm going to share a little conversation I am having with a bunch of greys today, which is the majority of the issues we're having on our planet right now is because of the event that began 2011 in the convergence, which actually meant that the planetoid artificial parallel Earth that the greys had created and have been created since the 1950s got aligned with ours and merged into our reality, which means they're still operating here, they're still present here, and in that, even though we have been kind of trying to push it out and do whatever we can, there is still a long way to go with these greys that are both from the past and the present and the future, and used to be humans, which makes it difficult for me to get rid of them, so to speak. So I'm having a discussion with these greys around and a lot of issues. Anyways, it is and you can ask yourself, why am I having these discussions with them? Because it is a matter of understanding. And it is a matter of understanding of the future of humanity, which is on the brink of turning either transhuman or giving the allowances to be able to work in the original progressive ways, as well as some of the remaining factions of the ones that survived the contamination and the original issues we had in our solar system, and their attempts scientifically in parallel realities to solve some of the issues that is going on our planet right now. And here I'm opening up to Pandora's box of information you have not gotten anywhere else. But this is my daily life, and I will share it with you. They have been pushing me all day, finally presenting me with an article which I have on my Facebook page regarding, I will put a link below the video, regarding how to create genetics in embryos to either produce organs or to sustain the life of others. Now, this is the main problem with what is going on our planet, the genetic harvesting. And it's not just human that are using these genetic experiments to prolong their own lives. The origin and the problem of the greys that are here is that somewhere down the line they lost their ability to have organic forms. And they're extremely eager to get back into organic forms and become what they used to be. And that has been part of a lot of the issues that we have got going. The whole stellar activation cycle, again, remember, these are races that go into a coalition or a collaboration to figure out how to sustain their own realities, building on a very, very reversed and distorted way of working, which is similar to the way we used to work in the workstations. We created the workstations to create worlds that would collaborate to continue the human evolution following the guidelines of the ancient ones, to create a prime human race that had the highest progression rates, the highest standards, and the highest purity rate, meaning that human would be able to work directly with organic form, transforming it by mastering energy and consciousness, as well as working on all timelines in all universes through the understanding of how to work with the energies in the heart field, as well as expanding the progression rate into enormous amount of information that could be received through the expansion of the brain field into different realities, from where telepathic connection and communication would be established by the use of changing the organic forms and that energy, following the different timelines that would then be created and opened up into through the heart field, and in that unfolding the remote viewing and the telepathic contact to other races and their realities and where they were existing. That was the positive one. A lot of stuff happened, and those of us who came here, we came from universes that had been taken out by wars a long time ago. We're talking so far back that it's deeply hidden in the old cycles, and trying to do things anew. So the ones that came here already had a history, already had a lot of stuff that need to be cleared up. And that is also why I'm always advocating for the clearing, because the approach some of these races and the other pillars or the other universes took was to do what's called turning the other cheek. And they decided not to look at it, with the idea that if we don't look at it, it will dissipate eventually due to what's called energetic and genetic affinity. meaning that these races that would follow the ways of hostility and exploitation and enslaving would be pushed into their own universes, while the others would work with only the positive version of reality, which we're seeing in the Love and Light movement. These are the remnant souls of these races. Unfortunately, when you push something into an enclosure or try to segregate it, it grows. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't dissipate. And that was because of the timeline event, which instead of the original dynamics where with the progression spiral, that when you do something not in alignment with your energy system and your genetics and the pillar you live in, your body would begin to deteriorate. Your emotional field, your heart field, which is not emotional, but the vibrational field that allows you to pull in specific forms of energies, would begin to collapse. And the brain field would therefore stop being able to connect to other worlds. That is how it was originally supposed to work. But because of the timeline event, unfortunate consequences came from that one. Because the timeline event was a ripple effect into all of the universes, which then, as we see it from the background noise of our universe as well, was a micro field of energy that was oscillating in a different vibration, pulling everything either downwards or into loops. Because the timeline event was not just one big kaboom and out. It rippled out, and then it rippled back, and then it rippled out, and then it rippled back, trying to solve its origin. It was like if you have a can of water or something with water in, and you throw a stone in, and you have the ripple effects out. But because of the limitations, the timeline event only went so far. It created what we could call a field within the main fields, but it was on a lower level because these energies that were pulled in the timeline event was from the third cycle. So it pulled the energies down in that area where the timeline event hit. So the outskirts of the explosion were the limits, which is what we're seeing in our universe as well. That's why science can't see beyond Big Bang, because that is the origin of our universe. No matter how much they're trying to date it back so and so many billion years, this change, the age, the numbers, how they measure age and time differs because our energies are dropping lower and lower, and that makes it more and more solidified, which means time does not run quicker, it runs slower, which means that Big Bang in the beginning, which was the timeline event, perhaps happened 5 billion years ago, but because everything has slowed down and the energy is getting denser and denser, which we know 4% is electromagnetic energy, which is lunar energy, which is what the androids are using, that's an old system type of energy from the third cycle. It slows everything down, and instead of just being 5 billion years, now suddenly it has turned into 15 billion years and so forth. In 20,000 years, if nothing is changing in our reality, it will be the origin of the universe will be 60 billion years, because everything gets denser and denser. And that is what's the original idea with the whole certification process of things that are unviable and cannot sustain life. That is that it will begin to deteriorate. But as I said, the timeline event pulled in energies from the third cycle. The third cycle had what we call spatial features, the ability to expand. And that is why they harvested, the Syrians harvested it on their workstation, trying to put it into their grid, because they wanted to expand their worlds beyond the current capacity they had. And why they did that is still in the dark. But whatever happened there, as it always happens with whatever race we're talking about, it was used for ill. And it began to become part of something that they were using in different forms of technologies, because not only did it show it had unforeseen effects, it kind of, when you use that kind of technology, which is used in the Taurus technology, you blast it out and you create a huge field within a field. And then within that field, you can begin to control the energy, but in different unforeseen ways. And as I talked about on my Facebook page, there was a natural order from the true human races. Males were expressing what we call diversity, transformation, and leading to evolution, whereas females were mainly expressing what is called order, balance, leading to harmony. And they were to work in progression teams where they would supplement each other and complete each other, as well as females could choose to work with diversity and transformation, evolution, and so forth. But these were the two dynamics that were there naturally to ensure progression. However, the Syrians wanted to do it in a different way. And there is always, whenever I talk about the Syrians, there are 1,000 ways why I do not appreciate them. And that is because they are the origin of more or less everything that has gone wrong, aside from the Orions and some of the ones from Vega as well. So I have my prime enemies, so to speak. But the idea of the third cycle energies is that it ripples out and it creates uncertainty principles. It creates something that is unforeseen, which you cannot foresee. And they wanted that for their evolution, for whatever. Let's make a positive version of it. And they created weapons from it. They created things from it, altering the timelines and the way the timelines were working. What usually would take place is that you had this, because we knew the dynamics of the core facilities and the principles, we would work with our heart field and we would expand our consciousness through that use of energy on the timelines. And from that would be able to foresee the effects of what we were doing, of what we were creating, and what we were participating in, the realities we were part of, how that would unfold. And for these races that wanted more, whatever they might suffer from boredom, they might have been old warriors, something from traumas, and wanted to exploit another reality and figure out how to solve their issues, which is part of some of the holographic technologies that were created from the group that existed in Vega in the 11.5 pillar. They created a lot of holographic realities to try and play out some of the issues they had with their chiasm and their time matrix build up, which had suffered from the wars. And there they were thinking, if they used holographic and virtual realities, they could recreate genetics and they could recreate these timelines, and by that link up to the original cycles from where they used to stem from, and by that avoid some of the AI futures that had grown out of the 11.5 pillars, but also the same issues we had with the lunars. Jumping away from that, the spatial features of the third cycle energies are uncertainty as well as ripple effect. It ripples out. Instead of a predictable oscillation that goes in a pattern which you can predict and work with because it is affected by your consciousness and what you want to develop in your organic form, they then invented these technologies, created fields within fields that were secluded and segregated from the other fields, allowing them to create worlds that would not affect others, but at the same time would also unfold uncertain principles and uncertain ways of behaving. What they had not taken into consideration was not just the expansion ripple out, it was also because of the limitations of that field, it would bounce back. Hence creating a feedback system, which they then thought, oh, that's brilliant. They should use it to create re-looping technology, bouncing out, bouncing back, bouncing out, bouncing back. Whenever they used that, what the problem was that the DNA and the consciousness units mutated. They mutated in different unforeseen ways. And this is the cause of what led to the contamination. And the contamination is when the genetics begin to break down. They mutate into something else. And in that, they lose momentum. They lose their ability to progress. And that was the problem with the third cycle. And that's why it was done, it was over with. And these energies were never supposed to be implemented, because it was from a cycle that had already done its duty. And whatever was left there were residual energy. It was already down to its minimum level of potentials. But due to the spatial features of it, it could expand enormous amount of energies. For instance, if you wanted to make a planet quickly, you use the third cycle energy because it expanded it kaboom right away quickly by the use of consciousness. But we had already played that out, and the third cycle is one of the cycles where we had the majority of wars. So in that, they took energy that was already coded in a specific way, and it was already full of residuals, and it already had a lot of issues in it, so to speak, of the wars and things that had gone on in these past timelines. They pulled it in. And with that, the Syrians in the workstations, and with that, it came into our cycle, the fourth cycle, the fifth cycle, and the sixth cycle. The fifth cycle, the 5-11 pillar, were eager to use this because they could use it to create the holographic worlds. Again, using the third cycle energies, but not taking into consideration that it was already tainted. So we had two issues. The races that used the third cycle energies through the Taurus technology, as well as these timeline technologies that would alter and create a space within a space. A lower progressive cycle within a main progressive cycle. That's the majority use the third cycle energies to do that. Our LPU is not constructed that way, but they created that within the already different type of ways we had altered the original coding system of our solar system and our universe that differed slightly from the ancient ones, because the ancient ones, they were just running through all cycles. Their way of working with things were all or nothing. They were a very, very specific race that did, let's just say, all of the 12 cycles, they did it in 5 years or something. They just ran through it and developed their genetics in such a fast pace that nobody could really keep up with that. However, when you create the space within the space, and the 511 pillar did so on the organic forms in the existing universes, using it on the true universes, so to speak, it created the contamination. And that meant the genetics began to break down and regress, and they regressed by going backwards because the third cycle energy was back in time. So the genetics that got contaminated with the third cycle energy through the use of Taurus technology or whatever, infiltration technology or whatever, their genetics began to move backwards. Hence we have the regression from human to mammal to mainly the humanoids got from this one, because they're not truly into human yet. So from humanoid, and their humanoid, their last level were the mammals, and then from mammal to raptoid to raptor to avian to insectoid, which we are seeing in the majority of the organic forms of the aliens. Today they are in their insectoid form, their avian form, or their raptoid form. Quite a lot of them are actually reverted so much that they are now snakes. They're not even reptilians anymore, they have now reverted to their snake state. However, the 11.5 pillar with the holographic realities, which I talk about in the advanced energy work videos, as well as reading my materials, but there's a lot of information there I haven't given because it's complex, it's very difficult to understand. But the 11.5 pillar, they created the holographic worlds using the original holographic teaching system of the ancient ones and their very, very advanced construction, altering that one into be able to create virtual realities, again using what was discovered in the Serum workstation to create fields within fields, worlds within worlds. However, they were still not, they were ignorant about the consequences of this. And I know I had discussions with the Vegas of not doing so and the consequences of it. And the whole idea of having virtual realities and holographic artificially created genetics, why that was a bad idea, including the unforeseen ripple effects of the third cycle energies. However, they went on and did so anyways, and that led to virtual realities, which we're having a huge problem with today, which then is the cause of the grace, because you had to put your body outside in stasis to be able to exist in one of these virtual realities, going into an avatar form from where you would continue in the virtual reality to live whatever life program you chose, whatever developmental program you had chosen. However, many of them got lost there because of the unforeseen effects of the ripple effect, bouncing back and forth, creating unforeseen timelines and unforeseen effects. You had the cause, but you never knew the effect. That led to what's called the infection, and that is the background of what is called the Leviathan genome. The Leviathan genome is literally the chaos genome. So whenever I talk about the Leviathan as a big chaos being, or it's put there in the Bible, it has in the distortion planes, in the astral planes, the distortion planes, it has turned into a very, very big snake, which we also talk about, known in the Egyptian mythology as Apep and these kind of things. It's curled around our planet. It has become a life form, but that's because it has absorbed. Apep, the big snake that is running the underworld, is a soul eater, and it has become so because this chaos thing absorbs the genetics of all the ones that got lost in these programs. And this is where I talk about, when I talk about lost souls, these are the ones I am clearing out and getting out of these holographic programs, and that's how I know how they work. Anyways, that's the infection. That infection goes in and alters your code sheet. So we now had two issues in the workstations back then. We had the issues of the contamination affecting the organic form, and we had the infection and contaminating the code sheets or the template. So now you're beginning to see some of the reasons why. These led to unforeseen consequences. The contamination led to the regression and the infection of the organic forms, leading from higher and higher advanced organic forms into lower and lower, pushing them back in time. First step, that's the problem with when you reach the insectoid level. The only solution you have if you don't want to go into full evaporation is to go into android form. Second step, we had the infection affecting the code sheets, altering with the predictability of timelines, as well as the consciousness of how to work correctly with the code sheet, as well as how to predict the event line of what you were seeding, as well as how to work correctly with the energies of reality, creating the infection. That created a new type of brainwave structure, which led to what we call the lunar energies frequencies. So that is the origin behind that one. Both of these affected the human on the organic form as well as the brain level, leaving behind only the heart field to function more or less correctly, which meant that people who were to get out of the contamination or the infection only had the principles to follow, which is where we start now. That's why when we go back in all teaching systems, no matter how far they go back, going back to the Priesthood of Atlantis that left there and went to India and Russia and America and whatever, created these old teaching systems, go with the heart first. It goes with morality, it goes with ethic, it goes to learn your consequences of your actions. Because if you are going to get the Leviathan genome out of your brain field, which is then, it's literally creating snakes in your brain when you use it incorrectly, and you are pulled into virtual realities if your soul is linked up to these. That's the only way to get around all that deception and delay and the shit stuff that's going on with these technologies. And of course, it went totally wrong. These virtual realities and whatever was created there and the societies around them, it began using this for wrongful uses and purposes. As well as the organic contamination, of course, led to some disastrous issues in the different planetary systems, taking out civilizations and forcing the ones that were not contaminated to leave behind their fellow humans in these contaminated systems, again using the segregation technology to be able to say, okay, the ones that were in there, if they would survive, and they would come out immune. They would beat the contamination. They would beat the unforeseen ripple effects on the genetics, the organic ones. Unfortunately, that did not go as anticipated because of the ripple effects of the timeline events that were affecting everybody. And when we talk about the last memories I have from the workstations, that were literally asking everybody who could leave, go, leave. Leave now. If you stay, we don't know what will happen. The natural law of the cycles did not play out as it was supposed to. What has been seen in one cycle must play out in another. Normally we could predict that. That was totally unpredictable. Now we didn't know when it would play out. Those of us who remained there, we tried to figure out, to do a genetic recoding, how to survive these things. And we did whatever we could in the laboratories to figure out, could we go into these holographic timelines and these false time matrices that have been created? Could we travel in? Could we go in and figure out a way how to clear them out? What technology would we have to build into ourselves to be able to do so? And we worked with the Pleiadians to do that, because the Pleiadians are brilliant geneticists and they know how to transform DNA, their organic DNA into crafts, their DNA into armory, their DNA into weaponry. They were brilliant scientists and not these gullible, love and light, shitty Pleiadians you see out there today. They are and half Maldakians. They're not true Pleiadians. And we would work with them in the whole kind, because the Pleiadian developed that due to the Orion Pleiadian wars, which were very unfortunate. That's a story for another time. They were scientists. And they were always working in transforming energy. They were always working in bringing things back to balance, getting it out of the timeline event and the ripple effects from there. That's where the transformation suddenly became a new tool for all of us, where we would go in and say, okay, we have this unforeseen diversity, which has now turned into chaos. The male consciousness were the first one to be hit with the infection, whereas the female consciousness were hit by the contamination. So with that, we suddenly had the male consciousness that began showing features of chaos and destruction and death instead of diversity and transformation and evolution. So that is also when we look out in the world, there's a lot of females today that are exhibiting the same kind of destructive thought patterns because they're technically not females anymore. They are males, they're majority, their brain is run by Syrian genetics. So in that, we suddenly had in the Pleiadians, and we were working extensively to figure out a way how to return the chaos genome back into being able to be diversity in a positive way, which would flourish and expand life and make different life forms flourish and exist, as well as turning the whole transformation from its destruction potentials and back into how could we transform the genetics, how could we clear out these genetics and transform them back or into something else, because the timeline event had happened. It had mutated the original consciousness genetics. It had mutated our organic forms. So we needed to figure out new ways to solve this, as well as how could we turn the majority of the energies of our universe that had gone from creating harmony and evolution had now turned into creating death and disorder. Okay, so, and the Pleiadians were forefront in that one, and that's why they got taken out first by and infiltrated by the Orions. They took over this system first because they were the forefront in knowing how to do this. So the Orions targeted the different races one by one, taking them out. So again, with this, that's how they eventually got it, and they infiltrated us in the workstations, and they took us out group by group until we were literally nobody standing, only a few of us, which altered ourselves into something entirely else. And we went in on all the timelines we could and tried to change that and go back in time and find the root of things to alter it and undo it and create another possibility. So now you're beginning to understand a little bit of my background. Okay, with that in mind, what we're dealing with here is that whenever we have scientists out there that are inventing quote unquote new things, thinking this is new, they are actually replicating and repeating what the aliens have already been doing on humanity for eons, as well as the humans. Due to the contamination in our solar system, they created fields within fields and parallel realities, other worlds within our existing reality where they could segregate themselves. These are typically the ones that are behind what we call the military projects. The military projects have different strands and groups. We have the ones that were controlled by aliens with the great majority, and we have the ones that were controlled by these humans that survived the contamination by segregating themselves. So these are the humans. They will eventually do a walk back because they can't exist in these semi-holographic fields within fields worlds, because they are only going to sustain themselves so long. They're built upon the 11.5 pillar virtual reality technology, which is not sustainable in the long run because the foundation is third cycle energy, and third cycle is now finally clearly removing away as the timeline event has stopped. It's bouncing back and forth. It has lost its momentum, and it is now going into, instead of being a wild ocean of energy, it has now come into becoming shallow waters, and eventually it will dissipate. So that is also why a lot of the races that have been using this technology to be able to be in our reality, they are leaving because they are losing the momentum that allows them to be here. Good. But if you are an android, you're not affected by energy. You are literally living in your own reality. You don't transgress, you don't deteriorate or anything, but you are stuck in that android form. And these android forms, to continue to exist, they're always linked up to a very big cube, typically running on Syrian technology, which holds the remaining genetics of their original race. So this is why you got the AI understanding. You have this big cube, and you have all of the little citizens that are linked up to that cube, where that cube holds similar to the cube you find in the game Sims, that avatar cube, holding up realities, building on the fields within fields, and they're existing here due to the 11.5 pillar world within world technology that allows for segregation of a different type of alien form to exist in our solar system. And this is where they have got allowances to be here by some of the races that live in their segregated reality, thinking that it might help, or they could share technology, or whatever idiotic ideas they had. Eventually, that led into that these greys, they are very, very hungry because they want to get out of their grey form, and they have lost all the abilities to understand this. And I'm not just talking about the greys that we typically see depicted in the alien literature. These are greys, humans from the future, humans from the past. They used to be part of the this system a very long time back. They are Syrians, they are Arcturians, they are Syrian A's, they're Syrian B's. Again, Syrians are a different group of people. They are from Alpha Centauri, they are from Aldebaran, they are from all over the system because of the contamination and the infection. The majority of timelines and continued existence and future realities in our world and our universes have turned into grey android AI, artificial intelligence run realities built upon virtual technology. That is the heritage we got from Vega and the 11.5 pillar, and that's why whenever we talk about the fifth dimension and new earth, that is a new example and an attempt to bridge in a holographic reality world into our system, so these holographs and holographic based arrays can continue their existence in a similar virtual reality that is being implemented into our organic reality. And this is where, when I say the whole kind of all of you people out there doing the virtual reality, I was out on the military base where I run an exercise, it's abandoned, and there was a guy having this drone in the air, and not only was he having this drone in the air, he was also wearing goggles and not even seeing the drone through with his human's eyes. No, he was seeing it through some goggle instrument or whatever, giving him extended vision or whatever. He was not using his organic capacities. It was all about technology, which is just kind of, another one of these idiots that are from these, controlled by these greys, thinking that virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and all this crappy technology we got here is the solution for the human problems. Not at all. It links us up to all of these races that have fucked up their reality to begin with, who did not take into consideration the effects of the infection, the contamination. And this is on the little piece of thing I wrote on Facebook today as well. When scientists now begin working with creating genetics and embryos of animals, everything in me just goes up into the red. Bing, 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 bing. Because that's where humans begin to seed in and allow for these races that already have fucked up their worlds to come in and participate in our world, even more so on the organic level. Until now, until the event and the stellar activation cycle, and all these people out there doing all this holographic link up by insertion symbols into their fields and allowing for the holographic races to come very, very close to our reality, enforcing the implementation of the gray timelines and these planetoid artificial semi-holographic virtual realities into ours by the use of this technology, by the use of this energy work, by the use of what the Keylontic sciences did and the humans, what they were doing there, seeding in this, amplifying it and pulling it into our world. We are now also seeing human scientists that are now beginning to work with what we call the organic level, which leads to the contamination, the use of genetics within another human, the seeding in of genetics from another species. That can only go wrong, because hybridization has already been tested out in the adjacent realities of the humans that segregated themselves, and that has not led to anything good. That's the military experiments. That's why the military template is breaking down. You can't hybridize. You can't use one species inside another species. That's parasitic. We're already having issues with the whole kind of a human being grown inside another human. That is parasitic too. That is not okay. But that was administered by the Niburians, and they made that one happen so they didn't have to be there and give of their genetics and make sure that their human projects would run on their own, a specific type of technology they implemented into their humans, and that grew and expanded and were taken over by the other races. In that, it also ensured a halting of the human DNA to progress and develop itself, because if it did so, it would never ever give life to another life form within itself. Never. It's a parasitic growth of another being using the mom's genetics, using the mom's energy, using the mom's cells to produce itself. It's exploitation in its utmost outrageous version. And I know we got a lot of nice thought forms about this, and we have a lot of pretty ideas about, no, it's so beautiful to have this little baby in my stomach, and all of these kind of things. But again, remember, I'm not thinking about things from a human standpoint. I'm seeing it from a total different level of reality, and in that I'm questioning everything, because none of what's going on here is in the long run following the original principles of life. And scientists that are working with this one, they are now seeding in what the other realities have been doing. And they are doing this because they want to, the scientists in the other realities, which have been dealing with a long time, how have they continued their existence in their segregated reality? How do you think they have continued to exist in a semi-virtual reality where their organic forms were linked up to cube, and their original form, the one they used to have, were in stasis, whereas they had created a similar organic form, hence the clone technology? How the replication, the replicates they continuously made, how do you think they've got genetics to create these replicates? Where do you think they harvested that? Because our reality, the one we live in, our world, we went out the contamination a very, very long time ago. These worlds that got contaminated, which part of our reality is now what we call the underworld. Very, very unfortunate, and still there energetically speaking, and that's been part of my releasing work as well, clearing out these segregated realities, which we call the underworld. So that needs to be cleared out, and that's a huge problem too, because the whatever they're doing in the Hadron Collider and all similar types of colliders that are banging enormous amount of energy into the underworld, the underground, is activating this and pulling it to the surface, creating portals that opens it up into our world, as well as whatever subatomic nuclear testing that is going on in the subterranean is also amplifying all these kind of things and surfacing it, so humans will have to deal with it. And if scientists at the same time are creating these genetic experiments using exploitation as a way to solve an already issue that should be dealt with the human who has the problem. Yes, it's fucking unfortunate when your liver breaks down, but why did it break down to begin with? It's regenerative. What did you do to break it down? And if you can't do it in this life, if you've been healthy your entire life, good. What about your emotions? Are you living truthfully to who and what you are? Oh, no, you're not, because your heart field is highly contaminated, because your quote unquote soul that comes from God and is pure and good and fine is not. That soul is linked up to timelines that are full of shit. That contaminates your emotional field. That contaminates your organic form. What are you thinking? How do you think about things? What are you amplifying? What are you participating in? That determines how the base of your DNA is working, because the mental energies goes with the electromagnetic energy that is directly affecting the genome, which we know from epigenetics, not in this context in this way. This is me jumping a lot of explanation to get just to what I want to say here. So with this, with the whole logical, ethical kind of thing, that goes back to the original issue of, one, the infection of the virtual realities, which had been left behind by many of the races. You couldn't go in there unless, if you went in there, you had to leave behind your body in stasis. And if you went in there, you couldn't trust the program you were put into were honorable enough. Unfortunately, to contrary, you would be trapped in these false time matrices, because of course they were used as an entrapment device. They were used as a way to get in genetics to continue sustaining these virtual realities, as well as entrapment and exploitation systems. Whenever you went warring somewhere, if you took someone, you could take the templates and put it into this virtual reality where you then could harvest from it to your liking or whatever you wanted to do. So that's a whole machinery in itself. It's a trade system, and it's also being used for entertainment, and it's also being used to be sold. It's also technology that's being sold by the androids, because how do you get a life when you have fucked up your own and you're a stupid machine? You go into semi-virtual realities where you get into an avatar that is semi-organic, and then you play out your life in different ways and forms. You kind of get a little bit of a holiday there. So you get, oh, that's the human life, that's how it works. Okay? These are the grays we're dealing with. These are the facts we are dealing with. And when humans begin to repeat these stupid mistakes of the past, present, and future, and drawing it into our reality by thinking, oh, this will solve all problems, they are amplifying and seeding in these virtual realities with all their issues we're having, which we don't want to get to this world, but it's there and we need to deal with it. Secondly, when they begin fucking around with the human DNA and altering it and hybridizing it and changing it, They are pulling in the knowledge from the ones that segregated themselves because of contamination. They need to come back, and they need humans to create new types of organic DNA so they can come back, because their DNA is different. They have sustained themselves in two modalities: one by harvesting genetics from humans, two by hybridizing themselves using different forms of humanoid genetics. Hence the background for the military projects, which have failed. So these are some of the things that are going on here. And I know I get very, not emotional, but I'm just, when you're sensing this severeness in me and this energy in me, it's just as much because stupidity, one of the things that are running in all of these races as well as the human race today is stupidity, and I can't have it. If you will say, what's the worst thing in this world? Stupidity. Stupidness. People not understanding the consequences of their choices, not doing an effort to understand the consequences of their choices, and not progressing and taking self-responsibility to make a better world, but just leaving to someone else so they can take it all over and make it happen. So with this, and with this kind of, are we then just going to let people die when they get ill? There are. It's not just this life. It goes back to past life. It goes back to the soul level. It goes back to the template level. It goes back to the worlds they came from. It goes back to everything they are. Their current organic form is an energetic, organic expression of everything they are. So this also goes into the answer all of you are having. Oh, let's save humanity. Well, take a look at humanity. What are they doing? Look at the vessels. What do you want to save there? This is what we're dealing with. And you say, well, Randy, that's your truth. That's not my truth. And I totally agree on that one. That is my truth. I can only say that the moment you get your higher awareness and you begin seeing energy, and you begin seeing behind the overlay, and you begin seeing behind the organic form, and you begin to see, why are people eating meat? Why are they continuously doing cannibalism of another life form? When you know that animals actually used to be humans and you're eating animals, then what are you doing? You're eating your own species. Why do they do that? What is their soul about? Where do they come from? Why is it so important for them to have their flesh, eating genetics from another living being to sustain themselves? Why can't they transform plant-based food into becoming energy? Why do they grow fat? What's obesity about? Why do they enjoy all of these artificial products more than the pure nutrition that comes with fruit and plants and so forth? All of these questions need to be asked. And this is not about us segregating and separating ourselves and thinking we're better or whatever. This is about responsibility and the waking up as a human race, acknowledging what we are and what is in front of us. Look at it. Don't have your blindfolded illusions about what you want it to be, but what it actually is. If you have obesity and a person who is living extremely unhealthy, there's a reason for that. Figure that one out. Most of the times it's emotional issues. It's about suppressing emotions that they don't want to deal with. They don't want to acknowledge it, so they eat their way out of it. They comfort themselves with food instead of dealing with the pain and the emptiness and whatever is going on in them. Go and see a fucking psychologist, and then deal with your human emotions, and then deal with the human issues, and then begin exercising and eat correctly, and you will discover that you don't have to have this fucking self-pity. You don't have to keep up this bloody happy face while you're ignoring your body screaming at you saying, take care of me, take care of me. Because in essence, what is obesity and eating and taking things that are unhealthy for you, that is all about energetically not being able to take care of yourself. It's about not being able to be caring about yourself in a good way, because if you did, you wouldn't eat this shit. Not good for you and you know it, but you do it anyways. Where's the root of that one? Where, typically the mom, what did your mother do to you? Were her love false? So you knew I need my mom's love. I will do whatever I can to get it. But at the end of the day, I know it's bad for me because it always comes with a package of something. So I have to build a defense mechanism around myself where I actually don't feel what she's doing, but I'm pretending that everything is good and fine, and therefore I make this big shell around me, and then I make myself into this happy personality. So she will always respond in a way that I can control, and then that way she can't harm me, she can't hurt me. And to sustain myself and get what I actually need, I eat. So I get that. I covered my emotional need, and then I denied totally, utterly, completely that my mom is a fucking idiot who is treating me extremely badly. That is more or less some of the psychological dynamics behind obesity. If people address this, of course there are many others, this is just one example, but if people address this and healed that, obesity would not be a problem. So again, with the whole food production, look at that. Why are we producing this crappy food? Take it off the shelves. Why are we even allowing for that to be produced? Who's producing it? Why is it being produced? Why are the shelves selling it, the stores selling this? They should go in, the store owner should go in and look at these products and say, I will not sell this, I will not sell it. It's made out of carbon and plastic and artificial shit, and I will not sell it because I only want to sell stuff that makes people healthy. I will only sell stuff that will give them the correct nutrition. I want to sell food that makes people healthy. That's how a shop owner should think. And all the ones that are, all of this crap that is being sold out there, the shop owner should say, I won't sell this. It has no purpose. I will only sell stuff and gadgets and things that are actually beneficial for this world. The same should scientists think. What am I actually doing here? I am in this embryo thing, and we're already having cows that have got big holes in their side where antibiotics are being grown. They have this big hole all the time, and then they grow the antibiotics in the stomach of the cow, and the cow is living in laboratories where it's linked up to machines that live its entire life there, so humans can get their antibiotics, so they can cure their illnesses. And I just read a news article that actually proved that most of these bacteria, they just go dormant. And when the whole doing the bacterial, the antibiotics, and you're taking your penicillin and you're done with that one, they just wake back up because they thrive in an unhealthy environment. So you create a healthy body, a healthy emotion, and a healthy mind, and illness will disappear. And in that, we don't have to grow organs. In that, we don't have to use other life forms to sustain ourselves. It is a simple equation. But the reason why this has not been taken into consideration is because people will not educate themselves enough to understand this. They are comfortable in their comfort zones of lack of knowledge, because there you can create the illusion of the world you want. If you don't know enough, you can create an illusion. Okay, so that's why also the majority of humans have been kept in this entertainment industry, so they live on illusions, quote unquote, holographic worlds, quote unquote, semi-artificial worlds where you're not really present in your organic form. So a lot of stuff can happen while you're sitting there eating shit in front of the telly and watching some crappy movie. While your brain is occupied with the telly, you're getting infected by the rays from the screen, and you're eating chemical food that then amplifies by these screen waves, and what you are seeing creating a different organic form that you are not in contact with, which you can't sense and feel because it's so polluted. So now this is again some of the information which I'm dealing with on a daily basis. And this is the information where when you then talk about with these greys and what they're doing here, they have no clue of how the organic form works. And that's why when we talked about abductions and all these kind of things, they have been working with the human form in ways that clearly shows they have no understanding of what they are doing here. So again, the first step in all of this work, and where I say that we need to develop our high abilities first, is we take responsibility for ourselves. And the simplest way to do that, to counteract the contamination, You eat plant-based food, which will lift the vibrational level of your organic form into a high vibrational state that makes you more sensitive, which allows you to feel more. It's very unpleasant when that one kicks in. I'm telling you, you get oversensitive and everything suddenly feels very, very overwhelming. While you're doing that, you work with your emotional habitus. You do the psychological cleanup. And many of you say, oh, I can do this on my own. Yeah, to an extent, but you need tools. And if you haven't got these tools already, and I do my Human Project course 2, the Future Human Project course 2, where I talk a lot about psychology there. But I always say that if you don't have the tools, go and see a psychologist at least a couple of times so you get the tools of how to work with yourself. And if that doesn't work, well, of course, you are to do you can do the other approach, which the Buddhists have worked with, doing meditation and go in and allow yourself to do creative imagination and these kind of things, which I have been working with which is part of my course material as well. But there's a lot of things you can do. There are so many tools out there. Whatever you use the one that opens up to your emotional level. And remember, you've got a lot of blocking going on there. Because the reason why the majority of humanity do not remember what happened in their childhood is because they blocked it out. They didn't want to see it, they didn't want to feel it, they didn't want to know about it. So they created a separate personality that were not in touch with these things. Plus, the child mind did not understand it completely, and therefore there's a lot of self-blame and self-denial and hurting and not understanding. And there's nothing worse for a child to not understand. Because if the child doesn't understand, then your child will create an illusion, a story that then explains why this has happened. Why am I being abused? Why am I getting beaten up? Why does my mom not truly love me? Because kids are very clever. Why am I not being seen? Why am I not being heard? And it all comes down to one simple thing where most children then end up saying, it's because I'm not worth loving. And this is not just something I'm making up. I have been working as a psychotherapist in many years, and I know this. This is typically when we're doing the healing work, when I went through, and they would say, oh, you pulled it up and you interpreted it. No, because it came in so many different ways, and I've seen it in so many subtle, weird ways that are different from each human because their genetic composition is different, because their emotional structure is different. So whatever one child experiences is not the same as that would create a trauma in another child. It all depends on your past lives and what you have experienced there, and the whatever you came into this life with. That will determine how you will perceive emotionally, mentally, all of the situations of your current life. Popularly speaking, karma. From this, you begin working with your heart field, and this is why my classes come in and the work. And this is, again, where when you do the self-study, you get a lot of information there, but it all comes down to your energy work every day and how diligent you work with it. Because if you're just watching the videos and reading material and you do 1 hour of energy work a day or 50 minutes or 20 minutes and you're not looking at your emotional issues, you're not really going to the cause of things, you're not really digging deep enough and being authentic and being honest with yourself, you won't get anywhere. It doesn't matter how much you work with any system, you won't get anywhere until you're honest, until you stop being in self-denial. And let me give a good example of this being in denial, because we see it all over the planet. Let me give you a little story here. There is this couple who have lived together for 25 years. They are earning a lot of money. They're doing well. They're having good careers. She is suffering from a lot of pathological, what we could call from neurotic ways of being, which kind of controls the emotional stand of the whole family. Daughters and husband are beyond her neurosis whenever it kicks off, and they do whatever they can to calm it down. They have made this family unit work that way. Everybody's good with it, aside from the daughter is suffering from migraine, and she has now chosen a partner who's really not suitable for her, but she has done that just to get out, and that's good and fine for her. And she's happy, and she pretends she's happy because she has learned we just put a lid on everything, so we're all happy, so we get the good human life. He has done well in business as well. He carries a secret, which he has shared it with his wife. She knew it from the beginning, that he was sexually abused as a child. He went to his sister when he was a child and she told him, "Do ever, never tell that to anybody." And she shut him down, and he carried it as a secret. He has used that as a driving force to build his business so he could prove that he was good enough. He also used it to prove himself that he was not homosexual, because that's the typical effect of males being sexually abused. They are afraid they are homosexuals, because what does a child do when in face of a thing nobody explains to them? They think it's their fault. So he thought, well, I must be homosexual since I drew this human male to me that did this to me. Of course not. So again, with this, driving forces that are running people. This male got stomach cancer. He survived it. The neurotic mother, she got some kind of cancer, can't remember where it is. She survived it as well. This family had a lot of illness, but everybody's dealing with it. Now he is in his mid-50s. He has met another female with who he can talk things through. And he has then literally began opening up the box of what he has inside of him. And he discovers how much he cannot stand being in that false environment of denial. And he is now seeking a divorce. Good for him, sad for the family. But if we are lucky, that will push the mother to change her patterns, and it will push the daughter to seek a more fulfilling life and figure out why she actually has this migraine. She has been through all of the drills of the doctoral testing. She's been through all of it, and none of them can find the cause of why she's suffering from these extreme headaches. Aside from me, that probably has a little put in there, well, I think she's been pulled in by the grays who are fucking around in her brain. But that is another thing that goes around this one. So these are the facts of denial. It produces illness, it produces dysfunctional families, and it produces dysfunctional societies. No matter how brilliant a company they have got going and they're earning shitloads of money, their family structure is dysfunctional. That is not how you build a society. So first step first in all of this, those of us who are doing this work, and this is where I come in, this is how I work with things, you need to acknowledge what is in your life. You need to acknowledge your childhood, and you need to be able to stand in that understanding of what childhood was about and be honest about it and work your way through it with the pain, because it's not just about, ouch, it hurts, it's shitty, and I didn't feel loved, and I didn't like it. It is actually also you regaining the ability to see things as they are. Because if you had a childhood, even though it looked nice on the surface, all depending on your ancestry and your previous lives, you could have had the most perfect family ever, but you would still have been traumatized because you were different than the rest of them. So they didn't understand you. And again, what story did you make up? So what is the psychological work about mostly? It's not about feeling pain. It's not just about going into your crappy childhood and feel all of this and acknowledge my mom was perhaps not just such a good mom as I thought she was, or my dad was this and that, whatever. It is about you learning not to deny. It is about you learning not to lie to yourself, creating realities that are more perfect than they actually are. So you can see things as they truly are, so you can face it. Because that is what the core foundation of traumas and our psychological issues have done with us. It has created foundationally a need to create a reality that is not true. Hence, creating a God that takes good care of me. Hence, the aliens will come and save us. Hence, something that has nothing to do with reality. And facing things as they are and seeing it, no matter how relative it is, it will always be seeing things as they are relative to the context you are in. But you still need to be able to see it as it truly is. And the only way we can truly make humanity progress is if they tear the veil from their eyes and see things as they are. And the first step is and will always be your own psychological structure, the way you conduct your life, the way you live, including the whole, when I've been doing this work for so long. And I always, the healthy food, and there's always a lot of scientists telling this and that, whatever, giving the good explanations for people who are in denial. With the whole kind of this food is, when they're kind of, oh, I'm so bloated. I had this big steak and I'm so bloated. I feel so tired. I feel crap. I feel like vomiting actually. And I said, well, then why don't you stop eating meat? No, meat is good for you, so I'll eat it. seriously, look at your body. What's your body telling you? It's telling you it's disgusting. You can't break it down. You feel like vomiting. You feel like decay and death has entered into your system and your energy is getting lowered. Including, oh, I need this cake. I want to eat this cake. Why do you eat this cake? You feel bloated afterwards and it creates caries in your teeth and you're kind of feeling, you get the sugar rush and you feel down afterwards. Why do you eat it? Because I like it, because I like the idea of it. It's the ideas of things that are running people. That is, again, a false reality setup. The whole kind of, yeah, let's see, all the aliens are so good to us. Yeah, what about the other ones? What about the other ones? Have you thought of that they might send in their beautiful, non-hostile ones first and then the shitty ones come back afterwards? They take or create a genetic overlay and send it your way and you think, oh, that's a nice angel. You're not thinking about what's behind that one because you can't see through deception. So that is why I advocate for, first and foremost, all of you doing this work and following my teachings and whatever you need to do to get us going anywhere, because I'm working with people for a long time now. And to get people to change is fucking difficult. Even though I work with people for years and years and years and years. And that's why I'm just, at some point, I would really love to do my healing techniques again. Because there we could just plunge right through like a volcano eruption and just pull it up to the surface. And I could make people feel it and see it and sense it and work with it in the healing session. And they would come out changed quickly. Not all of this fucking denial. I would strip them of their denial and plunge them into the reality they were actually part of, and they would feel it and see it and sense it, and they would know, oh yeah, I forgot that one. Oh yeah, now I see. And then what do you see? How do you defend it yourself? What did you do to survive this? And then they begin seeing the patterns that they created, which are now influencing them in their current life and is stopping them from any form of progressing. Because progressing means you need to be authentic and you need to be in alignment with what you are, and you need to be truthful with who and what you are and what has happened. And there's no way around it. There's been a lot of the souls that are here now, the templates, they have chopped away half of their template. They will never make it beyond the fourth dimension because they chopped everything else away, not to be dealing with these timelines, not to be dealing with the effects of the past, not to be dealing with the shit that's been going on in our planet, because they just wanted to present themselves as this also pure soul that is only the good side of everything there is, the polarity thing. But if there's light, there's always darkness. Not until our planet is soaked in light 24 hours, which it used to be because we had two suns. And it doesn't rotate anymore. That's part of the timeline event. We're not supposed to rotate. Will there be no polarity? Okay. So what am I saying here? A lot of background to understand the dynamics here. But first and foremost, what I will, with this developing humanity, the first mantra will be stop living a lie. See things as they truly are. And the first step for all of you out there who are doing this, you can do my classes, you can do a lot of stuff while you're doing your psychological work, but do it, acknowledge it, face it, and then make amends with your parents the best way you can, and the surroundings and your schooling system and whatever has been going on around you. You need to deal with these things. You need to deal with it. Because that is the greatest weak point in everybody doing this work, and that is the self-denial and the deception that they are constantly imposing on themselves. It makes it too easy to lead them astray. It makes them too easy to not do what they're supposed to do, and it makes them way too easy to be manipulated with whenever they truly begin to do the developmental work that will take them out of the exploitation. And you have to remember, how do you control a race that actually used to be extremely advanced? Yes, the Niburians fucked around with our DNA and created something that was not supposed to be there, which is a huge problem, but we will work on it. But the best way to control that race is to use semi-artificial holographic link-up systems that controls the brain so they can't think the correct thoughts they were supposed to be. How do you create the energy for that one? You create an emotional field that is linked up, as I talk about the astral barrier, that is linked up to a lot of pain and suffering and shit, which makes people naturally trying to avoid this by building a more perfect reality within themselves using the methods of denial. And if that doesn't work well, we do the 7Ds, which is a specific type of cube technology. To make that unfold, you create a false ego parasite you put in there, which naturally creates the split in any human. So these are, again, with whenever we talk about developing humanity, and all of you out there asking all of these questions you are asking, work with yourself. If you have a question, it's yours. If you have something you want to understand, it's yours. Because my reality is not for most. My reality is not where you ask something and I'll give you a nice answer. I just gave you the full background here. And we are still up against aliens that want to harvest their genetics. They have been growing in us for 12,000 years now, and they're not going to let that one go easily. We're up against grays that need something to get them out of their organic form and back in, or of the android form and back into organic form. And they are still doing this semi-artificial holographic link up because they exist in that one. So humanity needs to take some clear stance on what we are inviting in and how we are inviting in it. And the last thing it is that we're dealing with some of the old ones from our own race that are actually and actively been working against us waking up and becoming what we're supposed to become after the contamination was over, because technically it is over. But we have got scientists who are fucking around with the grid in the underworld, and they are amplifying this, and they are lifting up a lot of shit. And that will enter into humans who have not dealt with their base field problems, which goes with the organic level, which goes with the root chakra. And this is where the subconscious comes in again. So the awakening of humanity is not a simple thing. It's just, oh, you just need to meditate a lot and then we will activate. Yeah, you probably activate a snake and it tells you that you are enlightened and very activated. It tells you a lot of information. But that's deception. That's not the true you. From my viewpoint, from where I am speaking, from my relative reality. And yes, because I'm dealing with all these other worlds and cleaning that one up, it's definitely making it difficult for me to see things as they actually are in this reality as things are now. At some point, I will get there. But this clearly, whatever was going on here was necessary to give in this long speech, so you kind of get a little bit of the background. With that, I also know I've amplified levels in you that you could discuss it was better not to be touched. And therefore, it's as always, whenever I come out with these big bursts of things, I have been pushed to make these videos for a specific purpose. And I can only say in this one, have I now seeded something that shouldn't have been seeded? Or have I given you a tool that will actually help you understand what is going on? Have I pushed you out of your delusion? Or have I actually pushed you further into the deterioration planes or the distortion planes? That is always the good question whenever you deliver information like this. Is it for good or is it for ill, or does it actually have any effect? Well, that's up to you to ponder upon, and that is up to you to investigate further. And this is where, when you listen to my material, you know this is what is going on. This is my relative reality, and if you listen to it, you participate in it due to the law of participation, because on one hand, I'm working with how to heal ourselves and purify ourselves and get back online using the principles, the laws, and the rules of engagement, and at the same time, we have the counter forces, which are the reality we come from and I was part of, and what I've been dealing with, and this is where I have my knowledge from, even though I always try to give you the highest vibration of it. However, today I touched ground with a lot of low vibrational stuff. We have the numbers 9, 15, 18, hence probably the push for me to make this video. Thank you.